Hello, today we're going to do lesson 6, equations with decimal numbers. Very easy lesson. Example 6.1 asks us to solve. Remember, when they ask to solve is to leave the x by itself so we can find the value. In this case, the easiest way to do this is to get rid of the decimals. And to do that, we see how many decimals we have in each. In this one, we have 3. In this one, we have 1. And in this one, we have 2. So the one that has the most, which is the one of 3, tells us the power of 10 that we have to multiply by. So we're going to multiply times 1,000 all of them. When we do that, we get 3x plus 400 equals 2050 if we multiply everything by 1,000. Then we want to leave the x by itself, so we pass the 400 to subtract. Then we pass the 3 to divide, and the answer is 550. In example 6.2, the exercise says that they found that 15,000 of the teachers were brave. And then they say that 300 were brave. How many teachers were there in all? So what we have to remember is that we're going to have two categories. We're going to have the brave and the not brave. And then we have also a total. And with that, I can work a table to compare what they're giving us. So here we put that 15,000 represents the ones that are brave, and they actually gives us the amount that are brave, which are 300. Remember, this is the actual count, and this is in percent, decimal, or fraction. And so what they're asking is how many teachers were there in all? This is the total. Now remember that since we're working with decimals, then my total is represented by a 1. So there are two ways that we can solve this. One is to do proportions. We just put the information given, and then we cross multiply. When we divide 300 by 15,000, the answer is 20,000. So there are 20,000 teachers in all. Now the other way to solve this is just by writing an equation. Remember that the equation is the part times the total equals the actual amount that represents that part. Then that number is going to go, since it's multiplying, it's going to go to divide, and we get exactly the same division, so we get the same answer. You can do either way. What you have to know and you have to be sure is that the part or the percentage or the fraction that they're giving you represents the same category as here. So brave, brave. Let's look at the next example where we don't have the same situation. Notice that here they're telling us that this part represents the comments that were baptisinal. But then it says if she made 2,000 comments, how many were not baptisinal? In this case, what I have to realize is that they're giving us information of the two different categories. They're telling us the part that this represents is 932,000, and then they're telling us that we want to know how many were not baptisinal, when they gave us the total, which is 2,000 comments. Now notice that we don't have the number that represents the part of the non-baptisinal, so we have to first find that. And we do that by subtracting 1 minus the 932,000. Once we have the part that goes with non-baptisinal, then we can actually find that. And I'm just going to do it as an equation. So I'm going to say that 68,000 of the total, which in this case is 2,000, so times 2,000 equals the part that we don't know. So 136 represents the amount of comments that were non-baptisinal. The next part on this lesson is the consecutive integer word problems. And I'm actually going to skip 6.4 and we'll come back to it later. We're going to do 6.5 first. Why? Because we have to remember that whenever they talk to us about consecutive integers, the first thing we do is we put x, x plus 1, x plus 2, and x plus 3. Because what we're saying is that if x is my first number, the next consecutive numbers are these ones, just adding 1 to each. And that's our first step on these kind of exercises. Then we're going to start translating from here. And it says that 5 times the sum of the first, which is x, and the fourth, which is x plus 3, is equals 1 greater than. And remember that when it says 1 greater than, I'm going to put here plus 1 and let the 8 times the third go first. Now that we have the equation set, then we're going to solve it. We first have to do distributive property, get rid of the parentheses. And then we're going to do like terms. So we have 10x minus 8x. Remember to change the sign when you pass to subtract. And then here we have 17 minus 15. So we have that 2x equals 2. And then we pass the 2 to divide, which means that x is 1. Now that's the first number. Your answer has to include the 4 consecutive integers because that's what they're asking. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those would be the 4 consecutive integers that meet these conditions. Now let's go back to 6.4. In 6.4, they say find 3 even consecutive. And you have to remember that when we see the word even or odd, we have to add plus 2. So instead of putting here x plus 1, I'm going to put x plus 2, and x plus 4. Because they're even consecutives, we have to count by 2s. Now that we have the variables that we're going to use, we start translating. And it says 5 times the sum of the first and the third is 16 graders, and remember again, 16 greater goes here, 9 times the second. Remember always to put the parentheses so that the 9 affects the whole number. Now we do distributive property, and then we do like terms. And in this case, x equals 14. Now again, remember that we have to make sure we get an even number. 14 is an even number. And now we're going to write 2 more consecutive even numbers. So the next one would be 16 and the next one would be 18. So that's it. Now do your exercises, and if you have any questions, please write them in the comments and I will help you. Have fun.